Our guest for this debrief episode is a licensed battlefield guide at the Brandy Station battlefield. He is joining us today to discuss that battle and the experiences of the men that fought it. The Battle of Brandy Station is the first battle of the Gettysburg Campaign and the largest majority cavalry engagement of the Civil War, where the Army of the Potomac's Cavalry Corps faced off against Jeb Stewart's cavalry in a fight that signaled an end to Confederate dominance in horse-mounted warfare. This is our conversation with licensed battlefield guide Michael Lentz. I am Colby Sumner, and this is America, Fog of War.
Pride of our nation, this day have set upon a mighty endeavor, a struggle to preserve our republic. Men's souls will be shaken with the violences of...
The cost of freedom is always high, but Americans have always paid it. And one path we shall never choose, and that is the path of surrender.
I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people have knocked these buildings down. Well, here's all of it.
We're told that on his body was found a diary. Under the heading, My Pledge, he had written these words: America must win this war. Therefore I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure.
Fill us in on an overview, like set us up, set the stage for us, tell us what part, where we're at in the war, what's happening, and kind of let us know, what's the overall landscape of what's happening in the war up to this point.
Well, absolutely. The Battle of Brandy Station is, while it is a smaller action comparatively, not more than 20,000 soldiers on each, combined between both sides, the Battle of Brandy Station is considered the largest cavalry battle in the history of the North American continent. And now it's not the largest all-cavalry battle because there are infantry involved on the Union side, but it is the largest cavalry battle. I would even say in the Western Hemisphere.
That's crazy,
That's
man.
neat.
And you said around 20,000 guys?
Around 20,000 guys. Not to mention artillery. That's coming along. 16 cannons.
Are they all horse artillery too?
They're all horse artillery. They're all horse artillery. And so what happens is you have a combination. Now, for the Confederates, they're all going to be cavalry and they're horse artillery. For the Union, it'll be cavalry, some infantry, and horse artillery. So there's the breakdown in the forces.
Gotcha.
To this point in the war, so the Battle of Brandy Station occurs on June 9th of 1863. It is the first battle of what would become a campaign that would culminate in a little south-central town in Pennsylvania called Gettysburg.
Home sweet home.
Now, this is exactly right. And so this is the very first battle of that campaign. To this point in the war, what has occurred is in the Virginia theater, or in Virginia actions, the Confederates have been successful in repelling, and this is the Southern forces, Confederate Southern forces, have been successful in keeping away the Union forces from capturing Richmond.
Right.
You capture Richmond, there's a possibility the war ends. They've hit on a really good commander by the name of Robert E. Lee to command the forces in the area.
They drew a pretty lucky card from the deck there when they got old Bobby Lee.
Oh, absolutely. But by this point in the war, and this is going to play a factor in the Battle of Brandy Station, a de facto dividing line has occurred between Union forces and Confederate forces. It's called the Rappahannock River. On the north side of the Rappahannock River are the Union forces. On the south side of the Rappahannock River are the Confederate forces. Near Brandy Station, where we're going to talk about, the Rappahannock River runs through that as well.
Okay.
If you were to follow the Rappahannock River all the way to the east, you would come to a city called Fredericksburg.
Right, and just not too long before this time frame, there is going to be a devastating defeat for the Union forces there at Fredericksburg. Some of the worst losses of the war, as far as percentages of single units. Doesn't the Irish Brigade get just absolutely decimated?
Absolutely,
there?
Yeah. And so Fredericksburg, that goes back to the two major actions previous to Brandy Station and Gettysburg, were the Battle of Fredericksburg in December of 1862 and the Battle of Chancellorsville in May of 1863. Now, these two major battles had been tremendous victories for Robert E. Lee and the Confederates.
Well, yeah, I mean, because at Chancellorsville, that's known to be like I know that the high water mark is here at Gettysburg of
Right.
like the Confederate military, the Army of Northern Virginia, but this is like their master stroke.
Oh, absolutely. It's a tactical masterpiece.
Yeah, Lee sends Jackson on this crazy flanking march, and they just absolutely devastate. They roll him up like a carpet, the Union Army.
And even the next day, Jeb Stewart's going to command the soldiers that Jackson would have after his wounding, and is going to basically hammer blow the Army of the Potomac back across the Rappahannock. It's a bloody and brutal battle there at Chancellorsville.
And let's talk about that for a minute. I mean, setting the stage for this battle to come at Brandy Station, and then the Gettysburg Campaign or the Pennsylvania Campaign, whichever you'd like to call it,
Right.
as a whole. You know, up to this point in the war, for the most part, things in the Eastern Theater have been rough for the Union
Oh,
troops.
that's absolutely the case.
So I know. I mean, this has to be easy to understand because you would experience this even on a sports team. Like if you were playing on a football team, like in your high school football team, just kept getting beat and beat and beat. That's a morale beating. You know, you're not living with the highest of spirits if that's happening repeatedly. And in a combat setting, man, that's just got to be a terrible thing to have to deal with, because then you're going to have to go back out and face those guys again eventually.
Especially if you know you're good.
Right.
That's the thing. The Army of the Potomac knows they're good. This is the Union Army.
Mhm.
They know they're good. They know the results on the field have been not indicative of who they are as soldiers. They are frustrated because they've been led poorly to this point. And so that's where the morale comes in. It's like we don't trust our head coach.
Right.
We know we're good players, using that analogy, but we don't trust our head coach.
Which would be so frustrating, dude.
Oh, absolutely.
And no wonder you get guys like,
Stragglers.
stragglers. Yes, yes. No wonder stragglers and AWOL guys are such a problem in this portion of the war, because it's demoralizing. It's demoralizing to have a good team and a bad leader.
Absolutely. And now, while the Union has suffered these losses, they've not suffered a major knockout blow.
Correct.
So while the Confederates have been successful on the battlefield, and that's great for newspaper headlines, the strategic situation has not changed significantly for maybe half a year.
Not at all. I mean, it's still the same. It's still the same. Really, you could go back to the start of the war, and it's still the same borders for the most part. I mean, there might be a little bit of Union encroachment into that area of the Confederacy, but there's not much.
Yes.
They haven't made it that far, and like you said, the Rappahannock seems to be where they can get there, and that's it.
That's the dividing line. They get there, and they can't get any further than that. So Lee is recognizing that, yes, we've been successful on the battlefield as Confederates, but we haven't come any closer to winning this war. So after Chancellorsville, he convinces the Richmond government, the Confederate government, to invade the North. Now, this is a pretty contentious decision a little bit, because the authorities in Richmond are seeing other areas of the Confederacy that are in trouble. And they want to send some of Lee's army over there to help save those areas, like Tennessee or Mississippi. Instead, Lee says, no. If we're going to effect a win, because while strategically it's important over there in the West.
Absolutely. I mean, if Vicksburg falls, it's game over pretty much.
But Lee understood that perception means everything when fighting wars in America. And if you are able to do a knockout blow on the level of Chancellorsville, somewhere in the North, like Pennsylvania, then there's a possibility that anti-war sentiment will inflame and convince Lincoln's government to come to the table for peace. So Lee, while he's seen as this genteel man who does not like to swear, drink, or gamble, at least with cards, he is seriously gambling here.
It's a huge gamble.
It's huge
way
gamble.
into enemy territory.
Absolutely.
And not only that, I mean, the whole war up to this point in the Eastern Theater especially has been fought in the South, right? So the Confederates have had the advantage of being on the home field,
Absolutely.
where all the local civilians support you. You know the landscape. Your guys are going to fight harder because they're on their own home territory. It's an intangible thing, but it's true. It works that way. When you're fighting on your home territory, you can look at case after case throughout history with this, especially in places like Russia. You know, like in the First and Second World Wars, it's said that Russians would fight terribly outside of Russia, but the minute you went into Russia, they were like lions.
A meat grinder.
And exactly. And so that being said, they've had a lot of advantages in that sense. He's getting ready to turn away all those.
Absolutely.
And he also has to realize, like Grant did and like Lincoln did, that if the Army of Virginia is defeated, the war is over.
Yes, is exactly right.
Yeah, but I think with his success rate at this time and within the past year of this time. Like, why not make a change?
He probably
on the
does
fly?
feel a little invincible.
He can just just change it on the fly and go where he wants.
And
really,
you hit that right on the head. Lee definitely believes that whatever he orders his army to do, they're going to be able to do it.
Like he's got the best troops in the world.
And he's got a pattern to prove it. He's got a whole year and a half worth of fighting to show that, yes, if I ask them to do these things, they will do it.
Well, and it starts at the 7 days. As soon as he takes over, it seems like they don't have like an overwhelming victory in every battle, but they don't lose a battle.
Oh, no.
From that point until Gettysburg.
And even a strategic victory. Think about this. The Army of the Potomac, Union Army of the Potomac, does not have a combined tactical, individual battle, and strategic campaign level victory. They don't. Not in the entire course of this war to this point. Lee, the only setback he has had is at Antietam, but even then, if you look at the Battle of Antietam, you can argue his army stood tall and did an incredible job of surviving that battle.
And were successful in getting back across the river and back into friendly territory.
Absolutely. So if you're going to cross the Potomac to invade, you already have that history that you are able to do that and get back across safely. Of course it makes sense. More to the point, he wants to have the control on his side. He wants to have the initiative on his side. He doesn't want his army split up and sent elsewhere.
Right.
He wants to control that. So that's where we find ourselves. But the problem is of trying to invade the North is once you move from behind the Rappahannock, the guys across the way are going to notice that.
Yeah.
They're going to notice that in a big way. And there's a potential that once you start moving, they're going to attack you.
Or sneak in behind you.
Exactly. And try to take Richmond. So Lee's plan for invasion is going to involve withdrawing from the south end of the Rappahannock and moving to the west, going towards the Blue Ridge Mountains and entering the Shenandoah Valley, and moving up the Shenandoah Valley into the Cumberland Valley, which then will take him all the way up into Pennsylvania. So he's hoping to do that. He's trying to execute that. So in the first week of, actually in late May, as a precursor to this, he's going to send his cavalry out under Jeb Stewart, his cavalry commander, an interesting man, a man who was not afraid of showing off for the ladies, loved the ostrich feather in the hat, loved the cape. Man, this guy, he even sang songs in battle. This guy is really an interesting character, but a very capable cavalry commander.
He's like a callback to Napoleon in like the Cuirassiers or something, you know, like they with the big plumes on their helmets and all that, like battlefield theatrics.
Oh, absolutely. And so he understands that. And to this point in this area of theater of operations, he's been the most effective cavalry commander because he has not once, but twice ridden around the Union Army without being stopped or seriously hindered.
And being pretty successful in the process, right? Getting all kind of supplies and destroying others and
infrastructure and supplies.
Talk about recon mission.
Listen, he's the original Ricky Recon, I think, dude. Like for real. The guy, I'm from the South, so I hate like blowing up the South too much or like praising the South too much in this topic because I don't want people to think that that's like who I'm rooting for.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there's some guys that are in the Army of Northern Virginia that are just amazing at what they do.
Oh, absolutely.
And Jackson is another one of those guys as well. But Jeb Stewart, you know, he's so flashy. He's the Confederate Custer that got to start earlier in the war. That's what happened.
From first Bull Run on up, he established himself as a capable cavalry commander. He's a West Pointer, class of 1854, a Virginian, and also a favorite of Robert E. Lee. He was there at the Harper's Ferry raid, basically capturing John Brown.
He's the one that delivers the message.
He is.
Well, the message for John Brown to surrender. Yeah,
absolutely. So Jeb Stewart is commanding Lee's cavalry. Now, at the Battle of Brandy Station, he's going to command more cavalry than he has ever commanded before. Not only the 3 brigades that have comprised his division for the better part of almost a year now, but they're also going to pull a brigade from North Carolina, and they're going to pull a brigade from the Shenandoah Valley. And so he will have 5 cavalry brigades under his command.
I'm sure they're happy to be there with him. Do whatever he says, when he says.
The thing is, he's a darling of the Richmond newspapers. So people have heard about his exploits. He's almost legendary at this point. If you ever listen to the song Join the Cavalry.
I've never heard it.
Oh, you should pick it out.
Okay.
It's basically him his men bragging about what they've done.
Really?
It's a fun song, but he would sing that. It was one of his favorite songs to sing because they would just keep adding lyrics to it.
Right.
With each exploit, they'd keep adding something to it.
It's like a unit morale booster, you know? What you just heard is a preview of one of our exclusive members episodes. If you enjoyed it so far, you can listen to the rest by becoming a member on Patreon. Just visit www.americafogofwar.com and click on the Become a Member button located in the menu. As a patron, you'll gain access to up to 2 extra episodes a month, as well as early access to those and our regular episodes, and everything is 100% ad-free. If you're worried about the cost, don't be. We have multiple membership tiers to choose from, our most affordable membership subscription being just $5 a month. Every membership subscription goes such a long way in helping Brett and I make America Fog of War. And if you want to help us ensure that this show continues to grow and get the story of the American warrior out to more and more people, becoming a member is the best way to make that happen. Thank you for listening, and until next time, stay frosty.